Hi, my name's Mel Milak. I'm a research assistant at the Health Research Institute, University of Canberra in Australia, and I'm also a PhD student at the Australian National University in Canberra. In this presentation, I'll be talking about the social acceptability of mechanical thinning and prescribed burning used to reduce wildfire risk in Australia. Before starting, I'd like to acknowledge my supervisor, Associate Professor Jackie Shermer, and colleagues Helena Clayton, Dominic Peel and Kimberly Brown, who have contributed to collecting data presented in this presentation. Managing wildfire risk is an important issue globally. Prescribed burning is commonly used to reduce fuel loads and manage wildfire risk in Australia. This is using fire in a controlled way to reduce the amount of combustible material available to burn in the event of a wildfire. However, with changing climatic variables and an increasingly smaller window to use this practice safely, the use of prescribed burning is not always possible or appropriate. This has resulted in a need to consider other approaches to managing fuel loads, including mechanical thinning, which is the use of mechanical methods to reduce or rearrange the structure of combustible materials in a landscape. It is also called biomass thinning, mechanical fuel load reduction, or mechanical fuel reduction, but I'll use the term mechanical thinning in this presentation. As with any natural resource management practice, there is a need to understand the social acceptability of that practice. Natural resource managers need to be able to manage the expectations, concerns, and needs of a community in order to effectively implement and communicate about a new strategy. While multiple studies in North America have examined social acceptability of fuel management strategies, including mechanical thinning, there are relatively few studies examining acceptability of mechanical thinning compared to the more traditional prescribed burning methods in an Australian context. In Australia, the use of mechanical thinning is traditionally limited to small areas of mechanical removal of fuel, predominantly done in small areas around built assets, high-value natural assets, roads and other infrastructure, and its effectiveness in the Australian context is still not well known on a broader scale. In 2016, the National Partnership for Mechanical Fuel Load Reduction trials were established. The objective of the trials was to begin to address gaps in knowledge about the effectiveness of using mechanical thinning to reduce wildfire risk, and to improve understanding of the environmental, economic, and social implications of the practice. The information in this presentation was in part collected as part of these trials. In 2016, the University of Canberra's Regional Wellbeing Survey examined the social acceptability of prescribed burning and mechanical thinning across Australia. The Regional Wellbeing Survey was first launched in 2013 to examine wellbeing, resilience and livability in Australia's rural and regional areas, and how people living in these regions view different policies and changes implemented in their regions. And since then, the survey has expanded to include a sample of people living in major cities as well. Questions about mechanical thinning and prescribed burning were included in 2016 to feed into the broader social acceptability project as part of the trials mentioned in the previous slide, and also to contribute to my PhD, which looks at the social acceptability of fuel management practices used to reduce wildfire risk in Australia. We focused on the factors found to influence acceptability of natural resource management in previous research and how these factors relate to acceptability of prescribed burning and mechanical thinning. This includes the perceived need for fuel management, perceived costs and benefits of the practices, values and norms, social trust, past experiences with wildfire and socio-demographics. I'll include the specific questions used in the survey as the results are presented. Over 13,000 people from around Australia took part in the survey, with over 11,000 answering questions about the acceptability of prescribed burning and mechanical thinning, and over 9,000 answering specific questions about these practices. Weighting of the data set was used to correct for deliberate biases introduced due to the stratification of the sample, as well as to correct unintentional biases, and to ensure, where appropriate, that results were representative of the adult population of Australia. We conducted bivariate analyses to understand the relationships between acceptability and the different factors, and a multiple regression to identify the factors that best predict acceptability when other factors are held constant. Throughout the results, I present the wording used in the survey questions. We use the term bushfire instead of wildfire and controlled burning instead of prescribed burning, as these terms are more commonly used amongst the general public in Australia. We didn't use the term mechanical thinning or mechanical fuel load reduction, as this is not a very well-known practice. Rather, we gave more general explanations of the practice. Acceptability was lower for mechanical thinning than prescribed burning, with a total of 75% indicating that prescribed burning was acceptable, compared to only 51% for mechanical thinning. The results also reflect the limited familiarity of mechanical thinning in Australia compared to prescribed burning, with a higher proportion of people indicating that they didn't know or that they neither accepted or unaccepted mechanical thinning compared to prescribed burning. We also asked about the level of support people have for both prescribed burning and mechanical thinning in their local region and near their home. Again, people generally showed more support for prescribed burning in their local region and near their home compared to mechanical thinning. So here's acceptability for prescribed burning in the local region compared to mechanical thinning, and near home for prescribed burning compared to mechanical thinning. Again, more people indicated that they didn't know whether they should support mechanical thinning compared to prescribed burning. Again, with a larger proportion indicating they didn't know compared to prescribed burning. And here near their home. While a smaller proportion of people indicated they would support mechanical thinning in their local region or near their home, more people indicated conditional support for mechanical thinning. This is here, but it would depend on how and when it was conducted. And only a small proportion of people said that they would not support mechanical thinning under any circumstances. In some North American studies, they found that acceptability for mechanical thinning was lower if the material was sold for timber or wood chip to assist in the recouping of some of the costs of the operation. It was sometimes seen, sometimes seen as a ploy to make money from taking materials out of the forest under the guise of wildfire risk reduction. We asked this question in Regional Wellbeing Survey as well. We found that 50% would support the sale of timber and only 19% would not support it. But again, a large proportion indicated that they don't know. We asked on a scale of 1 to 7 how strongly people agreed or disagreed with 4 statements that reflect the perceived need for fuel management. Each was significantly associated with acceptability of mechanical thinning in our bivariate analysis, with those who agreed with the statement more likely to feel mechanical thinning is acceptable. So for the statements that there's a high risk of bushfires near where they live, worry about the potential impacts of bushfire, fuel loads are too high in the local region, and it's difficult to get enough controlled burning in the region. For those who agree, so these are the lighter blue bars, so those who agree with these statements were more likely to have a higher mean acceptability for mechanical thinning. We asked on a scale of 1 to 7 how strongly people agreed or disagreed with statements that reflect benefits and costs for prescribed burning and mechanical thinning. Again, each was significantly associated with acceptability of prescribed burning and mechanical thinning in our bivariate analysis, irrespective of whether the statement was about prescribed burning or mechanical thinning. Those who felt that there were more benefits and less costs were more likely to feel that both prescribed burning and mechanical thinning is acceptable. So here the statements about mechanical thinning and controlled burning being good for forest vegetation health. Those who agreed, so the lighter bars, had higher mean acceptability for both prescribed burning and mechanical thinning. And then for the statements about mechanical thinning and controlled burning harming animals and bird populations, concern over the health effects of mechanical thinning or smoke from burning, or the risk of controlled burns getting out of control, those who agreed with these statements were less likely to accept mechanical thinning and controlled burning, and those who did not agree with it were more likely to accept. Social trust in agencies undertaking fuel management is one of the factors most consistently found in previous studies to influence acceptability of fuel management practices. We asked on a scale of 1 to 7 the level of trust that people had in different agencies or types of organisations that typically undertake prescribed burning and mechanical thinning in Australia. So they were Australian specific. Again, each was significantly associated with the acceptability of both prescribed burning and mechanical thinning in our bivariate analysis, with higher trust in each associated with higher mean acceptability. So those who are more likely to trust these agencies, so the light blue, private forestry, farmers, government-owned forestry agencies or businesses, National Parks and Wildlife Service, and rural and volunteer fire brigades. Those who were more likely to trust these agencies had higher mean acceptability for both controlled burning and mechanical fuel load reduction. In some previous studies, past experiences with wildfires were associated with acceptability of wildfire management activities. We did find an association with the level of impact of past wildfires and acceptability of mechanical thinning. However, it's not as strong as some of the other factors. So here, those that were severely affected by bushfires were more likely, significantly more likely to accept mechanical thinning compared to those that are not at all affected by bushfires. We also looked at whether people living in different areas were more likely to find mechanical thinning acceptable. Those living more remotely were more likely to feel that mechanical thinning was acceptable compared to those living in major cities of Australia. So the more remote people were, the more likely they were to accept mechanical thinning. We developed a multiple regression model to further explore which factors best predict acceptability of mechanical thinning. The factors included all those already discussed, plus additional socio-demographic factors, including age, gender, state, farming status, income, level of education, and employment industry. We also included factors that measured values and norms that were significant in our bivariate results. These were people's deeply held beliefs and expectations about acceptable behaviour that guide a person in determining what they believe to be right or wrong. These can be measured in many different ways, but in this study we focused on assigned values, meaning the values that are assigned to a particular practice. We did this by examining whether acceptability of mechanical thinning was predicted by the acceptability of other natural resource management practices, and also the views about environmental health in the local region. These are just some of the regression results, but noting that I've only been able to include the significant predictors because of the amount of factors that were included in the model. So these are just the ones that were significant predictors in the model. And rather than going through each of these individually in the interest of completing the presentation on time, I'll just explain what some of the relationships mean. So if the numbers that are presented are positive, it means there's a positive relationship. So for this one as an example, those who agreed with the statement that mechanical thinning is likely to be good for forest or vegetation health, they were more likely to find mechanical thinning acceptable. Where there's a negative relationship, so if you can see in this one here, there's some negative numbers, there's minus signs in there. This means there was a negative relationship. So this means that those who agreed with the statement, mechanical thinning is likely to harm animal and bird populations, they were less likely to find mechanical thinning acceptable. So I'll let you pause the presentation at your leisure to look through this list of items that were predictors of acceptability, just understanding those different relationships, the positive and the negative relationships. So in conclusion, perceived benefits and costs of the strategies, perceived need for fuel management, values and norms, and social trust were stronger predictors of acceptability for mechanical thinning than past experiences with wildfire or most socio-demographic characteristics, such as gender or occupation. Mechanical thinning is likely to have higher acceptability if it is conducted in a way that is perceived to have more benefits than costs, is governed by trusted organisation, and is seen to address the need for wildfire risk reduction. More research is needed in Australia to examine the benefits and costs of mechanical thinning and whether it reduces wildfire risk, and how acceptability changes as the practice is more widely used and more information becomes available. I'll just leave the presentation on a slide of some selected references for anyone who's interested. Thank you.